All right, welcome to the Founders Table podcast. I have a new co-host today as Nick Long is in Texas visiting his mother for her 70th birthday and doing some business out there. So today we have Chris McAnally, also known as C-Mac, very, very good friend of mine, owns a business right down the road. We actually kind of been on similar paths for the past 10 years or so. I first met Chris actually when I was doing business with a company that I used when I was in Jersey, a company that for our dialing system. Chris worked for that company for years, and he was like our main contact over there, and then left that company after dealing with some turmoil, right? Went and started his own company.
Eye to eye for sure.
Not seeing eye to eye with founders, owners, typical thing that happens. And now he's, crushing it right down the road. We're part of a lot of entrepreneur groups together. We're always trying to level up. We actually had the same advisor that's been helping. His name is Naveen, who's been helping us grow our business. So we do our group coaching calls, and we go to up to his beautiful property in Utah together and do experiences there. So I've been spending a lot of time with Chris.
Founders Table together.
Now we're doing the Founders. Yeah, now we joined the Founders Table. This is not just a podcast. It's actually a real thing. A new thing that Nick's been starting up with a bunch of founders, and it's going to be an awesome thing. So we had our first little mini trip out in Mexico. Wait, were you in Mexico?
Yeah.
Of course you were in Mexico because, of course you were in Mexico. It was a little blurry. Little blurry. But yeah, we had a great time in Mexico. That was our first Founders Table event. But anyway, so say, Chris, come down, let's shoot the podcast together. And then just a few minutes ago, I said, hey, let's think of some war stories, like things that you had to overcome with adversity. I know you're going through some stuff right now. Chris is in the Telecom business, right?
Telecom technology and telecommunications in general as a carrier.
So. Yeah, as a carrier. So what exactly does your company do?
Yeah, so we're a telephone carrier. So we run an entire network that specializes in B2B calls, SMS, any way to communicate to your customers. And then we also sell software on that network, again, that help businesses better communicate with their customers, keep in contact, marketing, customer service, every aspect of how you would want to talk to your customer, we provide. And so we're dealing with all the new and fun things that get thrown out from a compliance standpoint right now. It's it's probably one of the first times in the 15 years that I've been in it where it's like a new regulation every week.
Yeah. Well, the problem is with that business is that there's a lot of bad actors, but they group everybody together as a whole.
Yeah.
So even though Chris provides real dialing solutions for businesses who need phone lines and everything that comes along with it, there are some people who do the wrong thing, like robocalls or illegal text messaging stuff, and then companies like Chris just get just wrapped into this thing, even though, or even this, there'll be some clients that are working with Chris, right? And the clients are just start to do some shady stuff or whatever they're doing.
Not even shady stuff, just make a mistake.
Or make a mistake.
One of their reps goes off script. A direct mail piece they send out didn't get approved correctly and has incorrect language. And, where before that fell on the customer, so we were just a utility, kind of like AT&T. Now, because of all the bad actors and and frankly because the industry's lack of self control and self-regulation, now we're responsible for everything that our customers do, and we're responsible to know who they are, which is fine. We're responsible to vet them up front, but now it's become a full-time job to vet them every day for everything they do.
Yeah, but just to really expand on that, I want people to really think about this, right? I have right outside this door right here, I have 50 guys on the phones right now that are on the phones, right, that are dialing right now. Let's say one of my guys for some reason says some dumb shit on the phone, says something not supposed to say, whatever it may be. Curses a customer out, whatever. He says something he shouldn't say, right? Now, right, they could come after Chris and blame Chris because he allowed somebody on his network to say something wrong. Now, Chris has hundreds and hundreds of customers who have thousands and thousands of phone agents.
Yeah.
So how can it possibly be his responsibility to monitor hundreds of thousands of calls per day? How many calls per day go through your network?
Millions of calls per day.
Millions of calls per day.
Close to 1 billion a month.
Right. in case a few people might say something wrong, but yet he's liable and not just me. Like I'm liable for my company. I'm liable for what my guys say. If something happens, it should be on me. I just use Chris's services to facilitate my business. Why would he be responsible for what I just contract with him? So this has been the turn in the past year, right? Because we do this coaching together, and this has been the big issue with him dealing with all these attorney generals and regulations and all these things getting subpoenas for no reason, like crazy shit that he shouldn't be liable for, right? So like, what do you
it's a big industry, so like you said, there's tons of bad actors, right? So I mean, as long as people have made telephone calls, there's been craziness going on. So everybody's gotten the calls they don't want with the robocall, with the press one to speak to somebody if you want XYZ product. And for the most part, nobody within the industry self-regulated. So that just kind of ran rampant. It got pushed down quite a bit back in like 2011 with some regulations. And then as soon as they realized, the bad actors realized there wasn't going to be a lot of teeth, in the enforcement of it, they just went right back to the craziness. And so that made it tough for companies like us, because companies like us that didn't take that business now just get grouped in with everybody else. And so now we're fighting from behind the eight ball to make sure we are viewed in the way that we, truly do business in a compliant manner. And unfortunately, because of the scope of how big the bad actors, outreach was, everybody's just kind of guilty until proven innocent. So now it's a whole new thing for us and for all the other companies like us that we're trying to make sure to clean up the industry ourselves. There's some new trade regulating organizations popping up that are focusing not just on protecting the industry, but also cleaning the industry up. So it's definitely a whole new world for us, but kind of needed, because there was some craziness happening. I mean, surprisingly, for being in the industry, my phone doesn't blow up that much, considering probably how many databases I'm in over 15 years.
It's calmed down a lot on my end, too. I will say that. And
that is part of the effort. Now the fine line we have to ride is, now where do they stop? Right. So now that they've gotten a win, we've all kind of, circled the wagons and cleaned up. A lot of bad actors have been forced out. Now there's, that need to justify their existence in some of these government organizations, some of these, these organizations that have been stood up to battle it. And so now it's making sure that they don't step over the line to really squash people's ability to do business while still keeping the bad actors out.
Yeah, of course, we want to protect the consumers at all costs.
Absolutely.
Right? No different than when you watch the fucking pharmacy commercials or the prescription medication, right? And they tell what it does. Yeah. By the way, this could cause heart attack, amnesia, stomach, they have
high
to
probability of death.
Even if there was 0.0001% on one of those things, they have to say it on every commercial. Absolutely. It's almost like, I can't believe they have to say this on every commercial, every possible side effect that could possibly happen to anyone. You know what I mean? So it's like they took that kind of thing and they're putting it over here on the industry, right? Where just and I get it, but it comes to a point where it's starting to inhibit how a business operates too. Like, every business operates with the phones. We have to call consumers, call leads, sell products over the phone.
Yeah, right? I mean, at a certain point, people want to speak to someone before they buy something.
Of course.
So there's a reason they go online and fill out their information and want to be spoken to by a business. Nobody's going to buy or make a big purchase, I mean, for the most part, without speaking to someone to gain some type of trust, learn a little bit about the product, make sure there's no pitfalls in what they're signing up for. And a business has to be able to make phone calls in order to get that person on the phone. Nobody's just going to do it directly on the website. And so the problem with that is, if you're doing any type of volume, just picking up a phone and dialing it and sitting and waiting through the ring, all of that becomes inefficient. So to keep your guys busy, you have to use some type of technology to organize it, to make sure that you're dialing the right people at the right times, to make sure your reps are doing the right things, because as soon as you go to a normal phone, you lose all control of compliance on what your reps are doing. You don't have the recordings, you don't have time.
Back when I first started, it was hand phones.
Yeah.
When the mortgage business, you're picking up and you're actually dialing. Things weren't recorded for compliance.
Yep.
None of that stuff. But now that you are recording calls,
and you don't know how many times your rep picked up that phone and called that person. They might have called them 100 times. You'd never know.
Yeah.
Right. at least with the technology, how many times they called them, what was said in every call, what the outcome of every call was, and you have that traceability to be able to go back and figure that out. So there's a need for the technology, but there's also kind of a desire to kill the technology. So it's a catch-22 for the regulators to make sure they don't inhibit people from being able to do business, and still keep the bad actors out, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm watching you the past year, like, playing defense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and you're playing defense, which and you're not playing as much offense and trying to grow the business because you're just like deflecting all these things, and now you're trying to work with attorney generals and try to get help move things along and get it back and swing things back on your side. And it's just like I hate playing from behind and playing that way. You know what I mean?
For years, my sole focus of the business was sales and growing the business.
Sure.
For the last 2 years, it's been I've probably spent less than 10% of my time on that. And a lot of it has moved into, government relations, into compliance, into, keeping up with everything going on. And so, that's obviously a hit to us, and not focusing on the growth as heavily. We have a team that now does that separate from me, but my personal role has fallen way more into administrative role.
Government relations.
Yeah.
It just sounds so
That's terrible. A whole new word for me, right?
It sounds terrible.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. And it's a world that, coming from where we come from, I've never even dipped a toe in that water.
Who would have thought that you would have had to get into politics to help your business continue to thrive?
Yeah, I mean that's the new world. So everyone that is trying to stay in this space is now focusing on it. There's always been industry groups to try to advocate for businesses like yourselves that make telephone calls to do business.
Sure.
A big one actually just folded, but which was kind of disappointing. But a new one got stood up that's doing the right things. It's a group called Reach. Which is kind of focusing on both sides, right? So whereas the old groups just focused on pushing policy that kind of kept things status quo, the new guys are realizing that that's not going to play in the new world. So they won't, they're focusing first and foremost on cleaning up the industry. So making sure everyone's doing the right things, everyone has access to compliance knowledge, so they know when they are and aren't, staying in compliance. And then they take the fact that they're doing that and go to the regulators to try to show, hey, we're already cleaning ourselves up. Don't put our industry out of business.
Yeah.
In trying to get rid of a few bad actors. And so that's a constant battle. There's every time something happens that makes your phone ring less and does something good for consumers, they try to take it one step further, and it usually gets muddied. And there's a new bill out right now that wants to change the definition of what an automated telephone dialing system is. And so they got that win with the phones ringing less. Somebody in Congress wants to, take it a step further and change the definition of ATDS, which right now is anything that can automatically or randomly generate a phone number to call or uses pre-recorded messaging, right? So if you just use a regular dialer where you have to put the phone number in, somebody has to actually initiate the campaign, a person's on the phone when they pick up, that's at the moment not considered an ATDS. But what they want to do is make any system that can store a phone number and make a call for you considered an ATDS. And they use very vague language in the bill that says it needs substantial human intervention to make the call in order to not be considered an ATDS. So then it just leaves it open to interpretation. It leaves it open to litigation, right? Your iPhone basically becomes an ATDS.
Yeah, because you store phone numbers.
Numbers. I mean, how much is significant in human intervention? Is pushing one button to make the phone call human intervention? Is loading data and building a campaign significant human intervention? It's just very vague language. So.
I'll tell you, I don't get robocalls anymore. Little if any. So I think it's finally cleaned up.
They're all but dead. I mean, anybody still risking sending them, unless they've got rock solid opt-ins where someone's going to their page, is just throwing caution to the wind.
And no one's doing that. I do get plenty of cold calls. Could you hear the boop? The bloop. You know?
Yeah. That's the connection of the two lines on a system makes that kind of noise where you hear.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody watching, you know that when you hear that little bloop before they pick up the phone, that's most likely a solicitation for a cold call or something.
Yeah.
It's usually not someone that has a relationship with you. But I'm sure everybody has gotten a lot less. I mean, it was bad, dude.
Oh, the pre-recorded calls were out of control.
It was bad.
That's something we cut 6 years ago. We got completely out of the pre-recorded game because one, people just don't care for it.
Yeah, of course.
Unfortunately, our industry didn't because there was a lot of money to be made, and it was the cheapest method to get massive amounts of calls.
I used it before in my previous business before it became outlawed. I've always been in business to business, and business to business pre-recorded messages were compliant and legal at that time.
Yeah.
And I did it up until when was it? 2015 when they eliminated the cell phones.
2011 was the first go at it.
But that was for consumers.
That was for consumers, yeah. And then 2015 or 16.
I think 15 or 16. That's when it messed us up bad because, we generate leads for our business now, and leads cost a lot of money. Facebook leads, Instagram leads, Google, all paid marketing leads, but doing the automated phone calls back then, it was legal, B2B, and if a business owner used his cell phone number as the business line, which a lot of businesses do, especially service-based businesses, contractors, plumbers, painters, they all just use your cell phone
as
the main
you
thing.
Advertised your phone number.
So you were still allowed to do that as well because that was their business line. And then they made the big change in 2015 that even if the cell phone was used as the business line, you were no longer allowed to dial it with a robocall or automated call.
Yep.
And then that's when everything changed for me because then I tried to scramble and try to figure out how to generate leads online, and I tried to pivot my entire company, and I had 100 people at the time.
It's a hugely different business to generate leads online than it is to simply buy business lists and call them.
So the big mistake I made was pivoting.
Yes.
I tried to pivot the whole company onto leads, spent millions of dollars, and over the course of 18 months, got fucking destroyed.
Oh, absolutely.
To the point where I was like, all right, that's it. Let's stop. Shut down most of the company. Just keep account management. Let's rethink. We need time.
Yeah, just dialing in an ad on Facebook can be thousands of dollars till you understand how to get the right audience. You can get a lot of clicks, a lot of leads, but they might not be your right audience, and you're spending thousands to fine tune that campaign. Whereas with the phone call, exactly you're getting the right business owner on the phone. So it's a big transition.
One thing that me and Kevin stand by, my business partner Kevin, is that we try to never do hard pivots.
Yeah.
We do transitions. Little by little, test it, look at the data, test it, add one more guy. So when we started APN, we first started doing some cold calling. We obviously couldn't do any robocalls. And then we decided to finally start generating leads online. We had one guy on the phones, and we generated like 10 leads a day. Made it work for a couple weeks, added a second guy, then added a third guy, and then over the course of 5 years,
grow it up.
Now we're 5 years in, and now the whole company's on leads, all the training's on leads. I got 50 guys on leads, and we spend, almost $500,000 a month on leads. And you know what? It's all compliant.
Yep.
When they submit their information, it says by submitting your information, you're agreeing to have us contact you via phone call, SMS, email, blah, 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 all compliant. And you know what, dude? I fucking sleep good at night.
That's the difference.
Knowing that I do things right, and then we have this woman that we use who every 3 months we go and take a look and make sure our terms and conditions and privacy policies are up to date, and nothing needs to, because they're always changing shit.
We just talked about it before we came in to make sure
make sure your consent. Yeah, I actually just had Chris look at mine just now. Say, Chris, look at my consent. Make sure, because he just went to a conference recently about this, and just take a look, make sure that I'm up to date with everything. Because, dude, one little thing like that,
that's
and they could come after you, and they could find you, sue you, try to take you out.
Oh, it's an ever-changing. The goalpost is ever moving, right? So we've spent time, blood, sweat, tears trying to figure out and make sure we stay compliant, right? And sometimes you have those hard pivots you have to make where, without knowing it, you are building something or you're doing something like you guys were that's perfectly fine, and you've built your whole business model on it, and then within a matter of months it can be completely illegal.
Yeah, but here's the thing too, it's like
changed. And it's not always things you think would be, right?
No.
On our side, we spent 2 years and more money than I care to think about developing ringless voicemail, right? Because that was what everyone was asking for. It was less intrusive.
So ringless voicemail, for you guys to know, is when your phone won't ring and it'll pop up, you have a voicemail.
It became very popular.
It
first kind of hit hard in the auto industry for dealers.
RVMs.
Your phone wouldn't ring. You'd look down, you had a missed call, you had a message, and it would just say, hey, you reached out about XYZ product, and we tried to reach you, but we missed you. Call us back. So very non-intrusive. From everyone's standpoint, everyone thought that's what consumers would want. They don't want their phones ringing at dinner.
So you're not bothering them.
So the industry made a big push. The marketing industry made a big push.
And it was working.
It was working great. We built a really nice system. We finally finished it. We booked a ton of business on it, millions of dollars a year in business on it. And then we get a subpoena. And it was, for a client, a big client who I know had opt-ins, who I know had the right to call, they thought they did too. And when the agency that was looking into them looked at their opt-ins, they were missing language that allowed them to do RVM, because RVM, once it was looked at, had been moved into the same category as robocalling. And so because they didn't have those opt-ins, it was a massive fine to them that they had to fight.
Millions of dollars, right?
Tens of millions of dollars. And, it's a big healthcare company. They fought it. They ended up being okay. They changed their language, obviously. They stopped doing RVM. We had to take a step back because when it happened, the same agency looked at us to make sure we were ensuring that our clients were doing the right things, which we were. We had all our ducks in a row, but we were told, hey, this is our next effort, is to get rid of ringless voicemail. So now you have to make the decision. If you'd like to keep selling this, you're perfectly legal at the moment, but sooner than later, we're going to make sure it's not. And so we had to decide, do we keep selling this and make the money on the revenue we'd already booked for the year, or do we cut it right there? And we, like January 2021, we just decided it wasn't worth the headache. We don't want to be on anybody's radar. We don't want to be out of compliance in any way. Cut it, and that was 40% of our revenue cut in one day.
I don't understand, because I don't think ringless voicemail is that bad. Wouldn't you rather have a voicemail and you choose to call that person back as opposed to your phone ringing with solicitations all day or automated messages?
I mean, that's the hard part, is what it's the same thing of what we deal with in the spam and scam likely tagging of your phone call, right? What we think is non-intrusive and perfectly fine, somebody else thinks is the end of the world.
That's another thing too. So now all the phone carriers, right, are trying to protect consumers.
Yep.
And when it thinks that a phone number is some kind of solicitation, it'll say scam likely or spam likely. You guys have all seen this shit, right? So now we're a legitimate business, right? Yep. And now we have customers saying, hey, your phone number is showing up as spam likely, right? We have no idea how to fix it. By the way, there's no playbook for this shit, right?
There's no playbook from the bottom to the top.
Everything when it comes to being a business owner.
Carriers don't know how to fix it.
All this compliance, consent. It's not like someone said, hey, man, look, you got to go put consent on your forms. Hey, you got to, you just learn this along the way by going online and research and going to there's no playbook for this. This is how you run a business. This is how you do compliance for your, you just got to figure this shit out. And then, so with this spam likely, scam likely thing, I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. All our customers are saying that. It's showing up. So then our dialer company.
And this started at late 2020. They
but now
slowly
it's really
implemented
bad.
it. Now it's gotten much more prevalent. The algorithms that do it are more advanced, where people used to just swap a number out. Now that doesn't work, because as soon as you swap a new number in, if it's changed the pattern of that number, it's going to go spam.
So if my phone number, let's say I call customers up and it's coming up fine, and I call another customer and for some reason he doesn't recognize my number and presses this call as spam, now that number is going to show spam to everybody until it's fixed.
Well, and it's disconjointed because not all carriers use the same database.
And that's it.
Whether you call an AT&T customer, it uses one database, a Sprint T-Mobile customer uses another, and Verizon uses a third, right?
Dude, it's insanity.
And there's no way for you as a business right now. There's a site you can go to and you can put your number in, and it temporarily cleans it up.
It's temporary.
About half the time it works.
That's what we were doing, temporary.
Yep.
Now we found a service, and now we're paying the company $5,000 a month that monitors our phone numbers all day, and if it comes up spam likely, they go and somehow do their thing and correct it within 20 to 30 minutes. So now,
and that's a whole new team. We have the same product. We have a whole new team that has to be hired to handle the remediation.
Yeah. So $5,000 a month I got to pay. He had to hire more people just to protect businesses from not showing up as spam likely, because if you get a phone call that says spam likely, you're not going to answer the phone.
Yeah,
so now you're losing
just
way
to
more
show
than
how ridiculous it is. So AT&T, we had a credit card in the business taken, and so we canceled it. I was out of town at a conference. Our bill came due from AT&T, so the credit card had been canceled. So they had to call me to get a new card.
Yeah.
For 3 days at this conference, I completely ignored the call because it said spam likely.
AT&T.
So AT&T's own billing department shows up spam likely.
A phone company.
A major
their own phone company
for internet service and everything at the business. The own phone company shows up spam likely when they call you from their billing company. So that shows nobody from the smallest business to the actual people running the carrier networks know how to perfectly figure out this spam likely solution.
Dude.
But it's something we all have to deal with, right? So it's just, everyone's involved in it. The big banks are showing up spam likely. Your mom and pop office or even like a veterinarian's office is just calling to let you know your dog or cat is out of surgery. They're showing up spam likely, so people are ignoring the calls. And there was a funny story of a guy that was lost. A hiker was lost, and rescue, like search and rescue, was calling his cell phone, and he said he was ignoring it, not getting rescued for 2 days because it said spam likely. So you just have this craziness that's happening with it, and I get it. Things get thrown out and problems occur. Bad actors come in, and there has to be a solution. But the broad brushstroke solutions
got to be a middle ground.
Take a long time to finally get fine-tuned where it's not hurting businesses. And in the process, it's hurting consumers. Like some of these things, some of these positions don't just hurt businesses. They end up hurting consumers who either want products or on the unforeseen effect to the consumers is because you now have to pay more money for keeping those numbers clean, because I have to pay more money to hire people to remediate these things, and all these things happen, it drives up costs, where those costs get passed down to consumers eventually at some point.
Sure.
Right? So the more protections are put in place to keep them from getting their phones ringing, which is great, but the more they're going to end up paying at the end of the day, which is just an unforeseen, the people making the regulations don't even take that into account.
Dude, what a nightmare.
Yeah, it's definitely...
I used to be a little jealous of your business. Now I'm not.
I mean, for a long time, it was the most fun industry you could ever have. I will say, we had a good run.
For a while, I was like, man, I wish I had a business of CMAC. He's got way bigger profit margins than we do. And then this past year, working with Chris and doing our coaching and just watching him not only deal with this shit, but how much money you're spending on government relations to try to help change some of these things. I'm like, dude, what a fucking nightmare. And conferences you're going on, all these, it's just nuts.
Yeah, I mean, and just obviously the bad actor revenue went somewhere for a long time. So there was there's business now where if you just can't absolutely know, even if it's a good business, if you even have a gut feeling or they just don't have something in line, you ask them for a compliance policy and they haven't written one yet because they're too new.
Yeah.
You have to have that in the back of your mind, like whether or not you can even take that business on.
Yeah.
So it's become an interesting, an interesting thing to have to navigate. But I mean, it's still a fun business. It's
if you're a brand,
I still love it. But
yeah, but if you're a new business and you're starting to get going and you hire your company, like you don't know any of this stuff. You don't know about this compliance.
I think most compliance isn't violated because people want to do something bad. Most compliance is violated because people are just ignorant to the
and just
rules.
Don't know.
And the rules are ever changing. So what was compliant a year ago when you hired someone to come in and as a small business to advise you, 6 months later could be completely out of compliance now. So it's something that everyone has to think about. I think moving forward, the businesses that thrive and stick around are going to have to make that part of their everyday overhead is to have someone advising on compliance pretty regularly.
Awesome. There's no playbook.
Zero playbook.
Well, we're all winging it. Thanks for the painful story.
Hey, and the good thing is the people that do the right thing, there's going to be a lot less competition and there will be more people will be willing to pick up their phones eventually as this gets cleaned up. Yeah. So there is an upside to it. I think we're going through the the pain points and the growing pains of the compliance in it. But the upside is eventually this will clean up the reputation of the industry, and we'll all be better for that, right?
For sure.
The people that have been doing it right all along are going to keep doing it right all along. The people that are going to go out of business are going to be the bad actors, which we've already seen quite a bit of.
Like I told you, man, we pride ourselves on doing shit right over here, no matter what, compliance with everything, and I sleep good in it knowing that we're doing things right. But again,
it's always nice to not worry about who's going to beat down your door.
Yeah, right? But again, I've been doing this for a long time, and I didn't know any of this stuff. I just learned little by little to finally get it right. You know what I mean?
Most people don't. That's, we and the problem was, for a long time, we as providers tried to stay out of compliance and advice because we didn't want to be held liable. So while we knew someone might be out of compliance for where they're buying lists or something like that, it was that catch-22 of, hey, I'll tell you you're out of compliance, or I'll tell you're in compliance, but then I'm running a risk of giving legal advice. And so now it's almost become something we have to do.
I'm not an attorney, but if I were you, I would.
If I were you, I wouldn't do that. You always throw out the disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. This isn't legal advice. But if I were you, I would not do this, or I would go hire this person.
Meanwhile, it's his responsibility.
Meanwhile, it's our responsibility.
For what everybody else is doing to hundreds of businesses.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's a little war story for you. What really happens in day-to-day businesses, and all the shit you got to deal with, and things you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, but you got to be on top of your game at all points, at all times, in order to run a business that's not going to get taken out, because the FTC, the FCC, attorney generals, they're always waiting around the corner to try to see if you're doing one thing wrong, so they could fuck you up, even though you employ employees and help businesses survive and make money. But that's just how it is.
Nowadays, the thing I hear the most when I try to tell people that don't know, especially businesses have been around and successful for a long time, the thing I hear all the time is, well, this is how we've always done it. Why would I change? This is what everybody does. Why would I change? And
because it's ever changing.
Those days are gone, the days of just doing things status quo, and it's just an old school way of thinking. So if you're not staying ahead and you're not learning everything that's happening
now more than ever,
you're putting your business and everything that you have at risk.
That's it. Well, that's it for the Founders Table podcast. Hope you enjoyed learning about some of the shit that entrepreneurs really deal with day to day, and people trying to just hold you back from where you're going, but you got to find a way to just overcome it and continue to run and keep getting better and better and better, and find a way to stay in it, Yeah.
All
right, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.